So let's say you did your taxes incorrectly in the past, but then you went on to get your citizenship. The big question is, can you easily be denaturalized? Now, in a criminal proceeding, you got to be prosecuted to the extent, right? To a crazy extent, the standard is pretty high. The bars are very high to prove. So in the olden day, of course, it was not a cakewalk, it was more difficult. But now, with the latest changes and the news that's brewing, right, everyone is pretty scared, pretty afraid. And the legal experts, and this is absolutely no legal advice, right? This is just my personal interpretation. Some attorneys are scaring people like, hey, you could be denaturalized if you made a mistake in the past. If that mistake really matters, it's consequential, then you could lose your citizenship. Versus, then there are certain other experts that are saying, well, there are other criminals ahead of you. There's, if you've done extreme crime, then maybe you get denaturalized. But as long as, they're always first in the queue, and by the time they get to you, maybe they don't, maybe it's not a real threat. Now, whether it is a real threat or whether it's not a real threat is not in your control, right? So the best thing that you could do is be prepared with alternatives. And what are the alternatives? Now, some people, if let's say shit hits the fan and things go really bad, which hopefully they don't, right? But let's just say people are getting prepared. You guys are getting prepared. And I'm not talking about any specific country. I'm just saying in general for any country, when you have a single citizenship, when you lose that citizenship either through denaturalization or they strip you off or whatever the reason might be, but when you lose that home country main citizenship or nationality, the problem that happens is you could be a stateless person. Once you become stateless, it's almost impossible to get any other citizenship. No other country is going to give you any citizenship once you're in a mess. The right time to acquire additional citizenship so you don't depend upon this home country nationality is right now. When things are okay, when things aren't a problem, this is where you need the ultimate insurance policy. And what is the insurance policy? It's usually additional citizenships and more nationalities. So when you have a portfolio of multiple residencies, and residencies are places where you would physically reside, maybe these are places where you truly enjoy living. So we are not talking about the visa-free access. You can go anywhere as a tourist, that's not a problem. But if let's say you want to go somewhere and be there for a lifetime, not be kicked out of that country, have ultimate rights in that country, then you need to have at least a residency where you could physically reside. So that's one part of things. The second and the most important insurance policy is a direct citizenship, is an immediate citizenship. What are the options? There's several options where you can strike an emergency citizenship so you don't become a stateless person. And then you want to start slowly using that citizenship to then strike additional important residencies. So if shit hits the fan, even if let's say you lose your home country nationality, you have this residency where you really want to live. Maybe it's Portugal, maybe it's an EU country, maybe it's Ireland, maybe it's any country where you truly love outside your home country. And you also have an independent nationality that's not going to be stripped out of you, right? So there are 3 or 4 countries, and I'm going to discuss countries that provide citizenship in 30 days, right? So right now, in the next 30 days, you could be a national. A second country where you can obtain this in 60 days, which has a more powerful passport. 90 days in a third instance, and 4 to 5 months in the fourth instance, which provides you a very strong, solid passport, which has the visa-free access to the EU. So I'm going to discuss that as a second part of the video. But let's first discuss the residency. Where are you going? If shit hits the fan, if things really go bad, and this is not assuming you've not done anything wrong. Let's say you're incorrectly in the situation, you're still fighting it out. There's good chances that you might be able to keep your nationality. But let's just say you want to get out of the negativity and still have a beautiful life outside. And let's say even if you lose your nationality, you want to be very happy outside. Let's just take an example of Portugal. Portugal is an EU country. The Portuguese passport is far better than any other Western passport, right? Because you're an EU citizen. You're a citizen of a freedom-oriented country. And how do you get Portugal? Now, that residency has different flavors. It could either be a golden visa, and the golden visa gives you a premium residency. You are looking at investing 300k euros in this option. You're going to get back the whole thing, including some handsome returns, but there's an upfront capital that you're going to lock in for 5 years, and then you get a golden visa. And what really a golden visa does is it waives any physical presence That is time on the ground that is required in the country in order to save the residency. Now, if you look at, let's say, the permanent residency or the US green card, then you got to physically be in the US in order to save that residency. It doesn't truly mean permanent. They just call it permanent, but if you don't stay there, then it's gone. It's as temporary as anything could be. But with the golden visa, you don't face that situation. That's where you can have the residency. It's maturing. And when I'm saying maturing, it's doing its time towards citizenship. So after 5 years, you could apply for nationality and become a citizen without staying much in the country. That is what typically the idea of golden visa is. So that's one type of residency. And we specialize in all the ones that I'm talking about, right? Not just in the citizenship area, but also in all these residencies that I'm talking about. The other residency in Portugal is the normal residency, which is the D7 or D8. If you have passive income like retirement income, then you go and get the D7. We help you get that start to finish. If you have an active income, a salary of more than 2,500 euros, then you obviously qualify for the D8 and we get you the D8 residency. The big difference between the golden visa and D7 D8 is that with this D7 D8, you physically have to live there for 6 months in order to save the residency, and then after 5 years, then you apply for nationality. Now, Portugal is going through an interesting change. They have proposed that the time frame to citizenship be changed from 5 years to 10 years. We are still awaiting the final rule on that. But let's say that does not happen, then it stays 5 years. But if that happens, then you're looking at an extended period to naturalize. Now, I'm going to come to the part where you would have a citizenship, then strike this residency. So you wouldn't really be worried about the time frame because you'll have an alternate nationality. But let's wait for that. There's also a third type of residency in Portugal, which is the CPLP residency, which is if you come from a Portuguese speaking country, meaning if you're a national of a Portuguese speaking country, then you can avail yourself a CPLP residency. It's slightly more flexible than the D7 D8. Of course, it does not carry any of the features of the golden visa, but this is a Swiss knife. It's a utility residency. This does not have any other qualifying criteria. The main criteria is that you come from a Portuguese speaking country. And then how do you come from a Portuguese speaking country? There are two ways. Either you're born in a Portuguese speaking country, which you are not, most of you aren't. So in that second instance, you naturalize, or you get it through immediate citizenship. And that's the program that I'm going to discuss later on in the video. So by getting that citizenship, you automatically striking some advantage, some potential advantage in Portugal. And none of this is immigration, legal, tax, or finance advice. This is my personal opinion. You should always consult an attorney and verify any of these things before starting, or alternatively, you can click the link, book a call, we can discuss the best one, hook you up with the right professionals, and get you started throughout the process, start to finish. Now, so CPLP residency is pretty interesting, pretty unique, pretty neat. Portugal is just one example. What are some of the other places where you could strike immediate residencies that are flexible, which do not require you to physically spend much time? The second option is Mauritius. If you're looking for something geopolitically its own thing on the side, Mauritius is excellent. It's disconnected, friendly immigration, easy in and out of that country, remote process for acquiring certain types of residency visas. So you cannot go wrong with Mauritius. Then you have options, a lot of options, multiple options. In Latin America, you have Mexico, you have Paraguay, you have Panama, there's Argentina, there's Brazil, bunch of options. Now remember the CPLP country that I'm talking about, the Portuguese speaking country that potentially has advantages in Brazil, potentially a fast track in a year if you're on a permanent residency in Brazil. And that opens up a Mercosur citizenship, which means you have lifetime settlement rights in Argentina, Chile, Peru, Uruguay, Paraguay, and so on. So you can do a lot of permutation combination. What else? Now, if you look at Middle East or Gulf, there's a lot of interesting residency options. There's Dubai, Oman, Qatar, and the list goes on. So residency options are many. You can strike as many as you want. Let's quickly pivot to the sense of this video. What is the most important thing? Not to be stateless. to have an alternate citizenship, to have a dual citizenship. And that is where you want a CBI or a CBE program. CBI is citizenship by investment, where you pay a certain amount and you get naturalized. CBE is a citizenship by exception, where you have a skill or you still do the investment and you have the skills so you can naturalize. The first country that I'm talking about is CPLP and an ECOWAS nation, where you could acquire this West African citizenship in close to 30 days. Unfortunately, out of all these countries, this particular one, I cannot disclose the name because it's not a CBI, it's a citizenship by exception. What other options exist for citizenship by exception? You have citizenship by exceptions done by several countries. There's Serbia, there's Germany, there's Austria, there's Latvia, Estonia. So a bunch of EU countries do the citizenship by exception, but again, the thresholds are very high. This West African nation is the cheapest that I'm talking about, and the pricing we are talking about is less than 100k pounds. Again, it can be customized based on your family members, what exactly you're looking for, and stuff like that. But the key thing over here is that 30 days time frame. The second on this list is in the Pacific, which is Vanuatu, and the price is effectively 115 for a family of four, 115k USD. That is, there's an investment component of $50,000, which you get back eventually. If you look at the total upfront is 165, you get back 50, so 115, and that takes care of four family members. What's the time frame? The time frame is approximately 60 days. You get your option, you get your passport. The third option is Nauru. Nauru is a very new option, a fresh option. So a lot of people will get this simply because no one knows about this country. It's fresh, it's under the radar. Now, if you compare the Nauru and Vanuatu options, then I would say Vanuatu is slightly better because you get back the $50,000. With Nauru, you don't get back that money. So although it's a couple of $1,000s cheaper, but then of course you're losing out more eventually because you don't get back the $50,000. That's Nauru. If you're looking for a stronger passport, then there's the Caribbean Grenada option, where it takes 4 months. Currently, Grenada has the EU access. In future, if they take that away, then that's a risk that you run. But that's where you want to have a EU residency like Portugal or any other option that you prefer to physically live. So there are all these different options that you can pick and choose from. The main criteria is that you start as early as possible. If you want to secure, the rules keep changing, programs keep closing. And if you are subscribed to this channel, I'll be notifying you the moment there's any new program or changes to any program. And as I said, you can just get in touch with us and we can get you started with whichever option fits your needs. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and catch you in the next one.